hey there, you ever get yourself like bending over backwards
Yeah.
for everyone else, and then you just kind of feel, I don't know, walked all over?
Yeah, totally.
Really going to unpack that feeling today as we dive into this book. Being too nice is not so nice.
Right.
It's all about how going like way overboard with kindness can actually totally backfire.
It really does. And it's something we hear about all the time. You know, we're taught to be nice, it's the right thing to do.
Mm-hmm.
But this book really digs into those times where it's like too much of a good thing, you know? It can really be detrimental, not just for yourself, but also the people you're trying to help.
For sure.
Yeah.
We're zeroing in on 9 of these like too nice traps that we can all fall into.
Yeah.
And like, don't worry, this isn't about like ditching kindness altogether and becoming like a total jerk.
Right.
It's more about finding that sweet spot.
Mm-hmm.
So you can be your genuine, caring self without feeling like you're always sacrificing your own needs.
Exactly.
So, ready to jump into that first mistake?
Let's do it.
Okay, mistake number 1. The need for perfection.
Mm-hmm.
You know that feeling, right?
Yeah.
When you're like hunched over a project, maybe a presentation at work, or even just an email.
Yeah.
And you're just convinced, like deep down, there's a typo hiding somewhere.
Oh, yeah.
You could spend like another hour, 2 hours hunting it down.
Yep.
Or you could accept that good enough is sometimes actually, good enough.
That's the tough part.
Right.
What's interesting about that whole need for everything to be absolutely perfect, it usually comes from this like deeper place, like this desire for validation from others.
Oh, yeah.
It's like we're kind of chasing approval to make ourselves feel better. And that's where the problem really comes in, when we start to connect our self-worth to reaching these goals that are honestly pretty unrealistic and a lot of the time just totally impossible.
Totally. And we've all been there, right? Like you get that performance review and it's not, glowing, or you just keep replaying some like slightly awkward conversation in your head over and over.
Oh, I've been there.
But it's when this need for perfection turns into this like constant driving force.
Right.
That's when things can get kind of messy.
Absolutely. You're constantly striving for something that just doesn't exist. You're going to burn out. You might even start putting things off. And honestly, the anxiety, it's real. And it can even hold you back, like you're too scared to try something new, to take a risk because you're so worried about making a mistake.
So then how do we like break free from this need for perfection? How do we shift our mindset from perfect to good enough?
I mean, that's the $1 million question, right?
Right.
I think it starts with just recognizing that, honestly, good enough really is good enough.
Okay.
Like, rather than shooting for perfect, maybe try for excellent or even just your best.
That's good.
Embrace the learning curve, accept that, you're going to make mistakes, it's going to happen.
Yeah.
But it's also valuable. It's part of growing.
It's so much easier said than done.
It is.
But so, so important. And you know what else is super important?
What's that?
Boundaries.
Yes.
Which leads us to mistake number 2. Overcommitting. I feel like we've all been there.
Oh, yeah.
Someone asks for a favor, but your schedule is already like bursting at the seams.
Yeah.
And yet, you still hear yourself saying, yes.
Happens every time.
Why do we do that?
I think for a lot of us, saying yes is a good thing. It's showing you care. It's building relationships. Maybe you get to try new things.
For sure.
But when you're saying yes to everything, all the time, you're just going to get stressed, resentful, you name it.
Yeah.
And honestly, you're going to burn out. It's like juggling way too many things at once. Eventually, you can't keep them all up in the air. Something's got to give.
Totally. I actually have this like vivid memory, but you know what? I'll spare you the details for now.
Okay.
The important thing here is that we've got to get better at setting those healthy boundaries.
We do.
Recognizing our own limits and putting our own needs first sometimes.
And that means getting comfortable with saying no. Even if it means, maybe disappointing someone else. Remember, you can't pour from an empty cup.
I love that.
Yeah.
That is such a good analogy. And it's so true.
It's true.
It's not selfish to prioritize yourself.
Right.
Which leads us perfectly to mistake number 3. Not expressing your needs.
Yes.
This one is tricky. Because I feel like it comes from this fear of like being perceived as selfish or demanding,
It is. It really is. And so many people, particularly those who already identify as being, too nice, they've kind of been conditioned to always put everyone else's needs ahead of their own.
Yeah.
But constantly pushing down your needs like that, it builds resentment, frustration. You just get emotionally drained.
It's like when you're on an airplane and those oxygen masks drop down.
Yeah.
You can't help the people around you if you haven't helped yourself first.
That is such a good point. You need to learn how to communicate your needs to others and to do it clearly and effectively. That is absolutely crucial if you want to have healthy relationships.
Right.
And it doesn't have to be demanding. You don't have to be selfish about it. It's all about being assertive, but also respectful. Be upfront, be honest about how you feel. Use those boundaries we were just talking about and be open to just having an honest conversation with people.
Right. It's important to remember, speaking up for yourself, it doesn't make you a bad person. It's about you and what you need.
Exactly.
All right, let's dig into a mistake that might seem a little counterintuitive. Mistake number 4, repressing anger.
Okay.
On the surface, not freaking out when you're angry, staying quiet. It seems like the nice thing to do.
Yeah, and there's a time and a place for keeping your cool. That's important. But completely bottling up your anger is really unhealthy. All those emotions are just going to build up inside you. You'll start to resent people, get passive aggressive, and it can even affect your physical health.
It's like that saying, right? Holding on to anger is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die.
It's so true.
So how do we even start to get better at expressing anger in a healthy way?
It definitely takes practice, but there are things you can try. First of all, try to figure out what your anger triggers are. Like, what are the situations or behaviors that really set you off? Once you know what they are, you can start to come up with ways to handle them.
So if you know that being interrupted constantly is a huge trigger for you,
right,
maybe you could try saying something to that person, when you're both calm. Or, hey, even just removing yourself from that situation when it starts to happen.
Exactly. And when you do need to express that anger, try to use I statements instead of you always do this.
Yeah.
Try something like, I feel disrespected when you're late without letting me know. You see the difference.
It's not blaming the other person anymore. It's about you and how their actions make you feel.
Right. It's a much more constructive approach.
So much better.
And sometimes the simplest solution is the best one. Just taking a few deep breaths, walking away from a tense situation. Mm-hmm. It gives you a chance to cool down and respond in a more thoughtful way.
That moment to pause is so important.
Yeah.
All right, before we jump into the next mistake, which is a big one, by the way, let's just take a second to think about what we've learned so far. About this whole idea of kindness versus being too nice.
Yeah. Good idea. It's easy to fall into these patterns, these like too nice patterns without even, I don't know.
It's so true realizing you're doing it.
You get so caught up in like trying to be helpful and kind and all that. You don't even notice how it's affecting you.
Yeah.
And the people around you too.
Right.
But that's why we're doing this deep dive,
Exactly.
To figure out what we can do better and how to have a healthier view of all of this.
It all starts with awareness, for sure.
Okay, so mistake number 5.
Okay.
This one's a perfect example of how, good intentions, sometimes they can totally backfire.
It's called intellectualizing defense.
Yeah.
Have you ever been in a situation where, someone says something kind of hurtful?
Oh, yeah.
And instead of just, letting yourself feel whatever you're going to feel, your brain goes into overdrive.
Oh, yeah. Mine too.
It's like you have to come up with the perfect logical argument to counter whatever they said.
It's like a defense mechanism. Like you said, you're putting up a wall, right? A wall of logic to protect yourself from getting hurt.
Exactly.
Which, sometimes that's okay. But if you're doing it all the time to avoid your emotions, it's going to create distance in your relationships.
Yeah.
And you'll never actually resolve any conflicts.
So then how do we find that balance? How do you acknowledge the emotion? How do you deal with it, but also not let it completely take over?
You have to learn to sit with the discomfort. I know it sounds kind of weird, but just feel it. Don't judge it. And then when you've had a little bit to process, you can try to look at the situation from a place of understanding and logic, too.
Easier said than done, but I get it.
It is. It is.
Okay. Ready to lighten things up a little.
Always.
Mistake number 6, white lies.
Oh, I'm guilty of this.
We all are.
Yeah.
Those little fibs that we tell to avoid a fight or just spare someone's feelings.
Oh, yeah.
This casserole is delicious.
The worst.
When really it tastes like sadness and cardboard.
That's a very specific flavor.
You know what I mean.
I do. And honestly, those little white lies, they seem harmless, but they can really damage trust and create bigger problems down the road.
It's like, oh, what a tangled web we weave.
Right.
But for real, why is it so hard to just be honest sometimes?
It all comes down to not wanting to hurt anyone's feelings. But what we need to remember is if you want to have genuine, strong connections,
Right.
you've got to be open and honest with people, even when it's hard.
So next time someone asks if their new haircut looks good on them,
Oh boy.
instead of being like, it's different,
Wow.
I should be honest.
You can be honest, just, be kind about it. It's all about finding that balance.
Okay, I like that. Finding that balance.
Well, it's key. Speaking of good intentions, let's talk about mistake number 7.
Okay.
Unsolicited advice.
Ugh, yes.
This is such a classic too nice trap.
I know it is.
We see someone struggling, and it's like our instinct is just to jump in with a solution.
Just don't think about it.
Have you tried yoga?
You just gotta visualize success.
Oh, yeah. If only it were that easy, right?
Right.
But as well-meaning as we think we are, when we offer advice that nobody asked for, it can actually make the other person feel
Like you're not really listening.
Exactly. Or that their experience, their feelings, they don't matter.
For sure.
Everyone's different. What works for one person might not work for someone else.
So, how do we avoid playing therapist then?
Right. How do we offer support without overstepping?
Yeah.
Start by just listening. And I mean really listening. Ask questions, be curious about their perspective, and just let them know that you're there for them without judgment. And here's the most important part. Only give advice if they specifically ask for it.
Okay.
And even then, do it with humility.
Such good advice.
Thank you.
And you know what else is super important?
What's that?
Knowing when to, step back and let people figure things out on their own.
So important.
Which brings us to mistake number 8. Rescuing others. It's that urge to just swoop in and save the day
Yes,
the second you see someone struggling.
totally. It's a tough one because obviously helping people is a good thing.
It is.
But when you're constantly rescuing people from their own problems,
Yeah.
it actually stops them from learning and growing and becoming independent. They have to be able to rely on themselves.
It's like that saying, give a man a fish, feed him for a day. Teach a man to fish, feed him for a lifetime.
Exactly. We want to empower people to figure things out for themselves.
So how do we know when we've crossed that line between helping and rescuing?
Good question. Ask yourself, are you doing something for this person that they're totally capable of doing themselves?
Okay.
Are you accidentally enabling unhealthy behaviors by always bailing them out?
Oh,
Things to think about.
those are really good things to think about. And it's interesting.
What?
This whole idea of wanting to protect the people you care about from any kind of discomfort.
Yeah.
It actually ties into the last mistake number 9.
Okay.
Shielding your loved ones from sadness.
Oh, wow.
It's so tempting to do that, though.
It is.
It's almost like you want to smooth out all the rough edges for them,
Oh, it is.
It's like if we could just protect them from heartbreak or disappointment, then maybe somehow they'll never have to feel those things, ever.
It's such a natural instinct to want to shield the people we love from pain, but honestly, when we do that, when we try to shield people from sadness,
Right.
we're not really doing them any favors. We're stopping them from experiencing the full range of human emotion,
Yeah.
And when we do that, we actually make it harder for them to bounce back from challenges, to be resilient when things get tough.
That's a good point. So instead of trying to fix their sadness or just pretend it's not happening, what can we do?
Sometimes the best thing you can do is just be there.
Okay.
Really listen to what they're saying with empathy. Don't judge. Just validate their feelings and offer support, but don't try to change how they feel. Don't try to downplay their experience. Just let them know it's okay to not be okay,
Yeah.
and I'm here for you no matter what.
So it's about giving them space to feel their feelings, however they need to.
Exactly. Because when we can experience those tough emotions, when we process them, when we actually learn from them, that's how we grow. That's how we become more resilient.
That makes sense. It's like we need the darker colors to really see how vibrant the lighter ones are.
I love that.
Yeah.
It's so true. Life is full of ups and downs, isn't it?
It really is.
It's messy, it's beautiful, it's joy, it's sorrow, it's everything. And when we let ourselves experience all of it, even the hard parts, and when we let the people we care about do the same, that's real compassion,
That's really powerful. So as we wrap up this whole deep dive into these 9 mistakes, I think what really sticks with me is this idea that being truly kind it doesn't mean you become a doormat. It doesn't mean you're sacrificing yourself for everyone else.
No, not at all.
It's about that balance.
Yes.
That sweet spot where you're there for others, but you're also taking care of yourself.
It's about realizing that self-care isn't selfish. It's important. Sometimes the kindest thing you can do for yourself is to say no to someone else.
You know, for everyone listening, as you're out there navigating the world with your big hearts and your kindness, just remember this. You deserve the same kindness, that same compassion that you're always giving to everyone else. Don't be afraid to set boundaries. It's okay to say what you need. And let yourself feel your feelings.
Love that. And as you go, just one last thought to leave you with. Think about how you can make your acts of kindness even more genuine, you know. Make sure you're taking care of yourself and respecting your own limits at the same time. Until next time, keep diving deep, everyone.